Hello there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as Ledev. And now we finally, oh boy, we finally are now catching up with all the cards in the Boomsday project. This will be the last video. I'm just going to review all the cards I missed. Let's just cut it short of the intro and just get to it. First up is the free Manna 2-1 Microtech Controller. And the battle cry, summon 2 1-1 Microbots, which, for people who don't know, a Microbot is a 1-1 mech. Overall, I think this is a common pack filler of the set. I think it will be decent in Arena. Overall, though, I think the temptation that most people will think about this card is they want to put this in a token-like deck and might try the temptation of trying Token Mech to be a deck archetype, which is a possibility. However, I don't know if it will see play, especially if you're trying to rely on the strategy of the Microbots being your token mechs and such, because we are in a meta where there's a lot of a very efficient early game board removal, and there's even some that are coming in the meta as we speak. I mean, we all used to Defile, but I think it'll be very bad when you play this, and then you get Star Shot, and then you're like, oh. Overall, this is one of those cards where I'm like, not really fancied. I mean, if I ever get the challenge of making a Pauper-centric Hearthstone deck where it has to be a bunch of commons, I'll probably just throw that in to fill up the deck, but other than that, I guess you could also mention the aspect that you could, quote-unquote, use those mechs to help with Magnetize, but honestly, I would rather have better mechs in my deck that I would rather Magnetize than try to Magnetize a 1-1 mech. Overall, I don't think this card's great. There might be some applications that I'm not realizing, but yeah, this is one of those cards where I'm like, meh. Pretty much meh on this card. Next up is the 2-mana 2-2 Toxicologists, so someone who studies poison. And the battle cry is, give your weapon +1 attack. So essentially this is the neutral option so that every class now has a way to buff up their weapon by 1 attack. It's a fine card. I mean, the fact that it's 2 mana is actually very tempting in Rogue, because Shadow Step is a card. So in Kingsbane Rogue, they could actually just use their Shadow Step once they play this minion, get the buff on their Kingsbane, then bounce it with Shadow Step, and then do it again to get like 2 attack boosts, which in Kingsbane Rogue is actually kind of decent. But still, I think that's kind of the no-brainer one. This is probably going to see play in variations of Rogue decks to help them get their weapons buffed to help with more efficient trades and such. That's kind of the given. Will this see play in other classes? Maybe. And the reason why I'm saying maybe is the factor that legendary weapons are a thing. And some of the weapons have 0 attack, so yeah, they're 0 attack because you're taking advantage of the basic enchantment on them, such as like a Lunef, Skull Minari, etc, etc, etc. But still, if you have to find a way to get 1 extra point of damage with that weapon because you only want to use the charges, say like 3 to 2 times, and not use the weapon as a quote-unquote enchantment, Toxicologist is a roundabout way to actually be able to efficiently use it and get in for a quick point of damage. Is that going to be relevant? Maybe. The keyword is maybe, but honestly, I think there's going to be enough weapon hate, especially Warrior has actually a really cool card that's a good weapon hate card that will probably make the legendary weapons a lot more mute, in my opinion. Overall, I think this card is just going to see play in the decks that like the weapon buffs, which is Kingsbane, maybe Burgle Rogue if they rely on the Lifesteal Dagger. But besides that, I'll be surprised if this sees play in any other classes. I'm not going to put it out of the ordinary that it might be at least tested, but Actually, coming to think of it, I just thought of a stupid idea. Maybe in Shaman, you can play this and play kind of like a Shuttle Rock deck that you essentially try to buff up Doomhammer for lethal. Okay, that's probably the most stupidest idea I ever thought of a deck design, but I might just do that janky brew just for the heck of it, just for laughs. Next up, it's the Unpowered Moeller, a 2-mana 2/4, and it has a weakness that it can only attack if you cast a spell this turn. I think this card is really, really good. And some of you are probably tilting your head sideways and being like, are you kidding me? Just hear me out, guys. Just hear me out on this. This card is secretly a really, really tempting card to put in Inner Fire Priest decks. Think about it. You play your Cleric, obviously, on turn 1. Then on turn 2, you play this. They'll probably want to trade in their minion into, or at least use their removal on the North Shire Cleric so you don't have your draw spells. Then, turn 3, you Divine Spirit and Inner Fire, and on turn 3, attack for 8 damage. Yeah, and we thought a turn 4 Mountain Giant was absurd, huh? Yeah, now to be fair, I could be just imagining a magical Christmas land here, but I do think this is actually a really decent card in Priest, especially how many of them are very spell-centric and such and have their own buff spells. I think this is secretly a really good card for Priest. Other classes? Maybe. I mean, the one that is seeing Spearmint in, thanks to the deck list that had been revealed for Blizzard with their update patch, was that this was actually going to see play in Tempo Mage, the deck list for that. Can this be played in Tempo Mage competitively? Maybe. I mean, it's one of those cards where, obviously, you only want to play this card in a very heavy spell-centric deck, but I do feel like in Tempo Mage it's a little bit because it's one of those where you're only using it for efficient trades. While I think in Priest it's actually a lot more better since there's the buff spells, there's the element of magnetization, and then there's just ways to keep this mech a more consistent threat, and it'll probably be consistently attacking since you're going to be casting spells for a majority each turn, or every other turn. Overall, I think this card is a lot better than it first looks. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, a 2-mana 2/4 that can only attack if you cast spells sounds really bad, but I do think this is a secret card that I think some people can actually get away with and actually do some pretty funny gameplay with, in my personal opinion. Next up is a card for Hunter, which is the 2-mana 2/2 Venomizer. It's magnetic, and it's poisonous. And for those who don't know, who are just starting to watch these videos, poisonous means that if this minion does any combat damage to another minion, it kills the minion. Okay, for those who've been watching the series, way back when I was talking about the Missile Launcher card, and I said that if there is any way that a class can easily give the Missile Launcher poisonous, that it's going to be a very absurd combo. Doop. Yeah, Hunter just now have a way to constantly deal 1 point of damage to every minion, and it deals poisonous damage when you magnetize it with the Venomizer. That is freaking absurd. I think this is a fine common for the class. It's also actually very useful for trades, especially if a mech deck is a thing in Hunter, which I think it's going to be toyed with, I'm not going to lie, especially with cards like, say... which one can I start with? Oh, let's just start with the Goblin Bomb. Oh, hey, a 1-mana 0/2. Oh, that does not really that threatening. Oh, on turn 2, make it into a 2/4 that's poisonous, and people will want to deal with it because they don't want to have their minions removed by the poisonous minion, but they do have to pay the cost that they're going to have to be dealt 2 points of damage. Now, you could also make a legitimate argument that due to cards like Magnetic and such, that we might see the return back of Mr. Hoot Hoot, the Iron Beagle. But remember, as I mentioned before, and I'm going to mention again, it removes the Tets, it removes the stat buff, but it does not remove the creature type, which for magnetic decks, that's going to be very, very good. Yeah, Venomizer is just a great card. It's very absurd with the combo of the Missile Launcher, but this is just a fine minion to either magnetize on turn 2 on a turn 1 mech, which we are going to have a lot of really good turn 1 mechs. I mean, Kangaroo, enough said. This card is good. I can see this in play. in my personal opinion. Next up is a really peculiar card for Rogue, and it is the 3 mana Violet Haze. It has only one ability, and it's adding 2 random Death Rattle cards to your hand. I'm not in love with this card. Now, there are people who are going to make the argument that this is Arcane Intellect for Rogue, and oh hey, they're trying to encourage Death Rattle Rogue, so maybe this is decent. Maybe I can get the Bright Nozzle and then actually play that on turn 4. The problem with this card is we have so many Death Rattles. Some of them really good, some of them that can be very, very detrimental. Very detrimental to your overall game plan, and it's going to be a dead card in your hand. I do think this is more of a fun card in general. I think people who do like the popcorn, let's see what this random card can do, and then make the Trollden video of how they discover the one minion that helps them overall win the game. Yeah, we're probably going to see a Trollden video like that, but besides that, I don't think this is a really popular competitive card. Remember, guys, it says Death Rattle cards. So, sure, maybe you can get a powerful minion. You could also just get Keen's Bane, which does not work for your deck strategy whatsoever if you're not playing any weapon power synergies. Yeah, this card is legitimately bad. I am not impressed with it at all, and I feel bad that I'm being this negative on it, because it is a fun card, but I will be really surprised if this sees competitive play. Next up is the Weapons Project, a 2-mana warrior spell. Each player equips a 2-free weapon and gains 6 armor. This is amazing. Now, some people might look at this card and they're like, wait, I'm giving my opponent a 2-free weapon and 6 armor? Isn't that bad? And honestly, the answer to that is a redundant, not really. And here's the main reason why. One, this is actually one of those secret cards where it's like, oh, you're benefiting your opponent, but also you could be very detrimental. Like I said, there's a lot of powerful legendary weapons, and we had very hard ways to try to remove them other than using the ooze strategy. Warrior just got a very efficient way to actually do weapon hate and still give themselves a pretty much more benefit out of it. Would they want a 2-free weapon? Sure. Would they want 6 armor? It's Warrior. Warrior always likes armor. And you can also, there's other little micro synergies you can do by giving your opponent a weapon. You could be like, oh, play this, and then play Harrison Jones so you can draw free cards. Oh, they get a 2-free weapon, so they have to decide, do they want to try to, quote-unquote, use it to help with trades with minions, and then that's dealing damage to them, which can actually help you with your overall game plan. I mean, this card is absurdly good. It's one of those that, yeah, giving them 6 armor seems weird at first, and there's some people that would try to make the argument that giving aggro decks a 2-free weapon feels bad, but remember something. You're getting 6 armor, and the weapon they get only has free charges. So when they attack the weapon, it's just going to negate the armor that you just gained. That's it. And that is really the power of this card. It's one of those cards where, sure, you're quote-unquote benefiting the opponent, but Warrior has a lot more better synergies with the weapon, with the armor gain, than other classes, and they're going to take more advantage of this benefit than the player who does quote-unquote get the benefit. It'll be amusing to see this in mirror matches, I'll say that right off the bat. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but overall, this is a really good card for Warrior. Don't sleep on this common. This common is absurd. Next up is the 2-mana Whirly Glider. And it has a battle cry, summon a 0/2 Goblin Bomb. Yet again, kind of like the Microbot controller, I do think this is more a common pack filler. Though, I don't know. You could make an argument that Hunter might toy with this since they do get the Goblin Bomb, and they do have some slight synergy with that. That might actually be a good argument for this card. But one argument that I do think that makes this card slightly decent, and also the other cards that do help generate the Death Rattle bombs, Remember, we have the legendary minion that when it's on the battlefield, anytime a Death Rattle minion is played or summoned, keep that in mind, it triggers the Death Rattle on it. So, let's say you have that legendary minion out, you play the World Rider. So, when you look at this as a 2-mana 2-1, summon a 0-2 Goblin Bomb that's going to deal 2 damage to the opponent's face before even it dying? That's actually really cool. I kind of like that card for that little silly janky combo there, and I might try to brew around that because that's actually kind of funny. But, and also I like this a lot more better than the Microbot control because 0-2 is a lot more efficient than 1-1 Microbots that don't do anything. Overall, it's still pack filler, don't get me wrong, but I do see some pretty potentially janky applications with this card that's actually going to be fun to toy with, in my personal opinion. Next up is a card for Priests, and it's the 1-mana 0-2 Test Subject. So pretty much a very happy-looking leopard gnome, looks like it. And it has a Death Rattle. Return any spells you cast on this minion to your hand. Huh. I'm kind of 50-50 on this card. I think this is either going to be a really good card for Inner Fire combo decks, but I can also see a legitimate argument that this card could be really, really bad. Don't get me wrong, the fact that it's 1 mana is probably the reason why I'm leaning more positive on this card. You can play this on turn 1, then you can play like your Power Word of Shield, and then you can play like your other buff spells that we are going to have within the meta, and even ones that are upcoming up. We'll get to that when we get to that. And then the fact that you can use it for efficient trading, and then you get those spells back into your hand, which you can use for later game plays, such as like Lilac combos and such. That's actually the more tempting aspect of this card. However, and this is the biggest however, we are in a very silent meta, and silence are a lot more not bad on mechs, because like I mentioned before, doesn't silence the creature type, so you can still magnetize and still build up your mechs even if they get silenced. This is not a mech. Once this is silent, it's a 1-mana 0-2. That when you buff it, you're just buffing it for trades, and you're not going to get those spells back. And that feels really, really bad. Overall, I think this is a card that's definitely going to be experimented on. Hey, it's a test subject, why wouldn't it be? But I don't know if it's going to be an auto-include in all Inner Fire combo decks. That Death Rattle is tempting. Don't get me wrong. And the fact that it is a 1-mana Death Rattle could actually make it potentially see play in variations of combo priests that also try to run their quest, the Death Rattle quest, so keep that in mind. But, I'm going to go 50-50 on this card. Either this is a coin flip of this card will automatically see play in every priest deck, or this card is just going to be crafted for dust faster than you can say Timbuktu on a bayou. Next up is a Mage spell card, the Astral Rift. It costs 2 mana, and allows you to add 2 random minions to your hand. How am I going to put this? The only time I really want to play this card is if I get it for free off a Primordial Glyph, and my other 2 options are really, really bad for the overall game plan. I don't like this card. I'm just going to say it outright. The fact that it's 2 random minions. There's a lot of good minions in Hearthstone. There's also a lot of bad minions that don't assist with your overall game plan. I mean, if you get Ancient Guardian off this, it's going to feel horrible. If there is one positive to this card, and there's only one positive I can think of to try to be optimistic, this is a card that does synergize with some elementals that help reduce cards that don't start in your deck by 2 mana. And maybe you can go into a Toolbox Mage deck, or just a silly random Mage deck, have fun, see the chaos, and see if you can actually win through some random shenanigans. Now, that's a fun deck. That's not a competitive deck. I think this card is legitimately really, really bad. I mean, we're going to inevitably see the Trollin video where somebody wins with this. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think you should play this to be competitively viable. I think you only play this because you just want to have fun, see if you can win the game with the 2 random minions, and see what happens. Overall, this is a really bad card. I would not recommend putting this in your deck. I only recommend discovering it or getting it off as random from your deck of wonders, and then it's going to be fine. But overall, this card's kind of a dud in my opinion. Next up, it's a 0-mana spell for Shaman, Beakered Lightning, and it has the ability to deal 1 damage to all minions. Overload 2. Oh, I don't love this card. I don't think it's horrible, because there are ways that Shaman do have moderate ways to get spell damage, like with the totems and such. How do I put this? I think if you told me that this was a Mage card, I would have been in love with this card, especially since the fact that they are so much trying to encourage the spell damage archetype. But in Shaman? The only positive, and I say this, being optimistic, the only positive is you could, in theory, put some spell damage minions in an evolved deck. It's not the worst thing to ever do. Plus, it does Overload 2, which there are some decks in Shaman, such as Overload Shaman, that tries to get their Mountain Giants out. Or not Mountain Giants, blah. Snow Giants. Too many Giants in this meta. They want to get their Snow Giant out early, so they might just use this to just try to get their more efficient trades on the battlefield, plus also feed into their Sapphire Spellstone. But that's being relatively optimistic. I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if this somehow sees play as a way to complement a Lightning Storm to help to make sure that the board on the other side is absolutely dead. But, I mean, the only optimistic, besides feeding into Overload Shaman that I could think of right off the bat, is the fact that it does deal 1 damage to all minions. So, let's say you're playing Pain cards that are beneficial to you, like Acolyte of Pain. Maybe, but I don't see it. I think this card might see play. I don't think it's going to be fun to play in it. I think people only play this if they really need that 1 extra point of damage on all minions to help with efficient trading. But let's not kid ourselves, guys. We have Volcano in the meta. And Volcano just gets the job done a lot more efficient. Overall, another not really great card in my opinion. Next up is the Bomb Toss. A 2-mana deal 2 damage, summon a 0/2 Goblin Bomb for Hunter. This is just a really good card. I mean, the Goblin Bomb is kind of the more aspect of this card, but I do think a 2-mana deal 2 damage might actually see play in Spell Hunter. Spell Hunter actually do like their damage dealing spells, and if they do have any Death Rattle synergies within their deck design, the Goblin Bomb is actually more positive than it looks at first glance. Overall, this one's just easy. It's a damage space spell, it's early game removal. If Hunter needs this, they'll play it, and if any of them are playing Magnetic synergies or Death Rattle synergies, then this card becomes a lot better. Overall, a really good common. It's a really, really good common for Hunter. They'll play with it. Trust me, you're going to see a lot of bomb toxing in the future. Next up is another neutral minion, the Brainstormer. It's a 3-mana free one with a battle cry, gain 1 health for each spell in your hand. This is peculiar. I mean, the only thing I can think of right off the bat is maybe Inner Fire Priest might toy with this card, since they are going to have a lot of spells in their hand, or even Control Mage. But will they have use for a 3-mana free 3 or a 3-mana free 6 or such? Really, this is one of those cards that I think the main benefit will come off of either if you have any way to manipulate higher health totals, if you're going for the Inner Fire Divine Spirit combo, or maybe if you're just needing an efficient minion for trades so that you can use your removal spells on a lot more worthy targets, for lack of a better word. I'm not going to totally downplay this card. A part of me do feel that it is very close to being pack filler, but I could see some potential applications in Priest and maybe even in Mage. but yeah, I'm kind of not amazed by this card. I could be totally wrong, and this actually sees play in a deck with Void Ripper, and then I'm probably going to die by this card somehow, some way, but yeah, I'm really leaning on pack filler in my personal opinion on this card. Next up, a really good common. It is the Bronze Gatekeeper. It's a free mana 1/5 mech that's magnetic and has taunt. Yeah, this is a card you should not sleep on. I mean, playing a free mana 1/5 taunt does kind of feel a little bit bad, but remember something. This is a mech, so it can magnetize. Now, I think there are ways that people are going to answer if you just play this by itself. There are a lot more Burn Citric Rush minions in this current meta when the expansion comes out that I think if you just play this by itself, it's probably going to die off faster than you can say Navy to Blue, Ali to Blue. But this card is more beneficial because of the Magnetic Clause. If you just give the stat boost to a very threatening minion that the opponent has to deal with, but still gives you benefit by either damage synergies or death rattle synergies in mechs, and there are a couple of really good ones, there are, by the way, then this card is really going to be beneficial in that aspect alone. Overall, it's a great common. Don't play this as a free mana 1/5 unless you absolutely have to. Just play this as a magnetic enchantment. But if you absolutely have to, it's not going to be an end of the world. Okay, next one is actually a fun play on words. I'm sorry, I just like really cheesy puns. It's the 9 mana Dozer. I see what you did there, Blizzard. I see what you did there. And it's a 9/7 mech with Divine Shield. I mean, this is a quote-unquote pack filler card. Don't get me wrong. This is one of those minions that when you want to play 9 cost, 10 cost minions, you want to overall win the game with them. But, and I'm going to say this as a but, the fact that it is a mech is synergistic with Magnetic. So, like, as we talked before, let's say you play this, it doesn't get removed. Oh, and then you play the Bronze Gatekeeper on it, and then make a 9... Well, not even a 9, a 10-12 Divine Shield taunt. That is really, really silly. Plus, there's also synergy like with Skater Bot, and you can actually, on turn 10, play this on turn 9, and then play Skater Bot, attach it, give it Rush, and then actually use it for a very efficient trade on a very late-game minion. Or even, it'll probably have Rush by itself if you play it in Dr. Boom Mech Warrior and such. I think, and also another beneficial of this card is might actually see play in Paladin because that Divine Shield might synergize with Bubble Shield, Divine Shield, Paladin decks that do see play once in a while. Overall, it's a fine card. You'll play it if you do need the 9 mana 9/7 Divine Shield. And if you're planning to use the magnetic keyword or try to give this Rush on turn 10, then it's fine. I don't think it's amazing. I think it's more practical. And there are some times where the more practical cards are the cards that see some very fringe to actually see some pretty competitive play, in my personal opinion. Next up, it's the Cloak Chemist, a 2 mana 1/2 with Stealth and Divine Shield. Honestly, this is a card where I think I need to first see it play before I can make a final confirmed opinion on the card, but I will go through the optimists and the cons of the card. On one hand, this does have Stealth, which does make it hard to remove. You can play this, and then you can actually buff it, like, let's say if you play it in Paladin, you can Blessings of Keenet, so it's a 5/2 with Divine Shield, which is really not bad. Or even in Priest, we're going to get to a free cost enchantment spell that gives creatures +2/+2. So play this on turn 2, and then on turn 3 have a free 5 Divine Shield. That's not bad either. But really, it's very dependent on if inner combo Fire Priest decks, or even just decks that use the benefit of having a stealth minion can work. And I'm kinda on the 50-50 on that. It might work. I mean, I think the only one pro to this card that I can think of right off the bat is it's not as easy to remove with board wipe, early game board wipes than there are with other cards, because the Divine Shield does protect it. It's the same reason why the Legendary Scientist in Paladin is actually really good. The fact that the Divine Shield does protect itself against early game trades is nothing to sneeze at. While on the other hand, this one is more efficient in the fact that it protects itself against early game removal. I think I need to see this to see play. I'll probably experiment with it a little bit, because the fact that it is a 2-mana 1/2 with stealth is tempting. The Divine Shield is very synergistic with some archetypes, but I think this is a card that's going to be experimented in the first few weeks, and if it finds a home in a deck, it's probably going to see play. But I could also see this easily being pack filler by the third week if somebody finds more better minions to play on turn 2 and such. But I do like the design of this card. I think this is actually really coy design for some specific deck archetypes. Next up is a card that I would not be surprised in Magic if it was from Unstable, but it's in Hearthstone. It is the Coppertail Imposter. It's a 4-mana 4/4 mech with Battlecry. Gain stealth until your next turn. I think this is a fine card. I don't think it's absolutely amazing, but it is a 4-mana 4/4 mech that can't be targeted by early game removal, which means it's a sticky mech. And as I've been repeating over and over and over again, sticky mechs synergize with magnetic like nobody's business. I mean, this is a perfect magnetized target. Like, even if you play this later game, it still will have the stealth, and when you magnetize, it's going to still get the stat boost, and the opponent can't target it with silence removal. That's probably the main strength of this card. You cannot target silence removal spells on stealth minions. So it's a way to secretly get some enchantment stack on before they can use silence on it and use it for an efficient trade. Or maybe use it for an efficient death rattle. Or, I don't know, make it poisonous and then actually make it where it can kill a really big late game minion and such. Honestly, I'm probably giving this card more benefit than it should. Maybe it's the art that's running me over, because that art is freaking hilarious. But I do see some potential applications of this card, especially with it having stealth. Warning though, for people who are beginning the game through this expansion, when a minion has stealth, it loses its stealth when it attacks. So, let's say if you magnetize this with Skater Boy, and you decide to attack, and you'll be like, oh, you still can't attack it because it has stealth. No, it loses stealth when you attack. So, that could be an easy beginner mistake. So I'm going to warn you right ahead, don't make that mistake. Use this for more beneficial magnetics, like make it have taunt, or make it have poisonous, or other things you can do. Don't fall for the trap of thinking that you can attack with a stealth minion and it keeps its stealth. It does not. Overall, I like this card. I probably like the wordplay a lot better, but I do think it has some potential funny applications in the meta. Plus, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat this. That art is freaking hilarious. And also the wordplay doesn't hurt either. Next up is a very peculiar rogue common card. It's the 5-mana 4/4 Cloak Chemist. If Coppertail was art I really liked, this art I'm kind of It looks like something I would see from a heavy metal cover, which, don't get me wrong, World of Warcraft art can vary in that, but I don't know, there's just something about this art that just makes me like, maybe someone will like it, but I don't like it right off the bat. But we're getting distracted with the art. What does the card do? It's a combo card, and it gives a friendly minion +4 attack. Excuse me, what? Okay, is this card good? It's really good in Arena. I don't think it's really good in Constructed, though. I think this is a perfect minion to play in Arena, because there are ways you can get efficient trades off with this. And just giving a friendly minion 4 attack, that can sometimes finish games, especially if you can combo. But In Constructed, I legitimately don't know. It's the fact that it costs 5 mana. And I know there's some people that are making the argument of, why are you so concerned about the 5 mana? We have stuff like Vine Spile Slayer. People don't mind comboing off with that. And yes, you're right. But remember, Vine Spile Slayer, people like that card because it automatically removes a minion. This essentially is saying, oh, you can use this as removal, but you first have to combo this on a minion on the board presence, and then go an efficient trade, and hope your minion don't die. I mean, Vine Spile Slayer is just a better option over this. Now, maybe this will see play in aggro to Odd Rogue? Possibly? I mean, it is a way to get more damage into the opponent's face in theory. So I could see it play in that type of deck archetype, but I think that deck is already well refined as it is, that I don't think they need this card absolutely. Overall, I'm curious to see how this card's going to play out, but I am not ultimately impressed by it. I think it's one of those comments that I'm just kind of being like, completely honest with you. That combo is nothing to sneeze at, don't get me wrong, but the stats by itself, I think that's what kills the card for me personally. But who knows, maybe this is the card that's going to kill me constantly in the meta. We just have to wait and see. Next up is the Crystallizer, a 1 mana 1 free neutral minion that has a battle cry, deal 5 damage to your hero, gain 5 armor. This is a really good epic. I mean, it's pretty much a Dire Mole in its stats, which people do play Dire Mole in the meta, keep that in mind. But that ability is very, very synergistic in some classes. Like the 3 I can think of right off the bat that this is synergistic for, and I'll go through them. 1, Druid. That Druid has a lot of spells that are very prevalent around armor gain. And the fact that you can automatically upgrade the Spellstone and make it where it's a more efficient removal spell thanks to gaining the 5 armor, that's really good. Also, Warrior. Hey, they don't mind getting armor. It synergizes with their spells. There's armor meta cards that they have in their class. They are going to like this card a lot. I think that's where it's going to see its most efficient play. Another one is potentially Warlock, because, like I mentioned before, with this set, they're trying to encourage a more self-inflict harm style deck with Warlock, so you can get major benefits out of it. And this card does complement that archetype. It fuels up the Spellstone. It allows them to maybe power up that Soul Buster and make it a really big minion and such. But I'm not sure. I think I more will take it on the aspect that it might have potential synergy of that. But it does also give me 5 armor, which armor is really good, especially if you're playing this in, say, like, Heal Zoo Warlock, which is a thing. I mean, if this is another option for 1 cost to deal damage to themselves so they can heal themselves on turn 2 so they can play a Happy Ghoul on turn 2, I think some people will just play that right off the bat for that combo alone. So, yeah, I think you can see potentially playing Warlock. Other classes, I'm not sure right off the bat. You could make an argument in Healing Paladin, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Overall, this is just a really good epic. It has some very powerful synergies that I could just think of right off the bat that I've just been mentioning. This will see play. I would be very, very surprised if it doesn't. Next up is the 6 mana 5/12 damage Stiga Tron. It has Taunt, and it deals 6 damage to this minion. I don't know how I feel about this card. I think if there is one benefit of this card that I can think of right off the bat after seeing this, if you need to make the mid-range Paladin mech deck that uses the legendary spell to summon a very significant late-game mech with it, this might not be a bad target for the magnetic minions, and then when it resummons itself, it doesn't do the battle cry, so it gets that stat boost, plus all the magnetic boots that it has, and makes it a very significantly threatening minion. But that's the only benefit I can think of at the bat. You could make an argument that this might see play in Recruit Warrior, or maybe even in Taunt Warrior. I don't know if it's going to see play in Taunt Warrior, if I'm being quite frankly honest, but I've been surprised by other stuff before. Overall, I do think this might see some fringe play, but it's a 6 mana 5/6 with Taunt. There are way better 6 cost minions you could be playing. Though, I guess if you evolve into this in Shaman, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world, since you don't have to worry about that damage reduction. Okay, there is one other way I could see this in play, and it's if there's any healing-centric decks like you see in Zoolock. They might play this as a higher-end minion to actually help that they can heal to help benefit their overall aggro plan. But that's very fringe. Like I said, this is going to be a very fringe card. I see its applications, I see its potential, but I do think it's going to be left on the workbench, if I'm going to be quite frankly honest. Next up, another neutral minion, the 3 mana free Electrolyte, or Right. That's actually a weird pronunciation on that one. And as the battle cry, if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, gain +1/+1. I think this is going to see more play in Arena than we'll see in Constructed. I mean, a 3 mana 4/4 is not bad, and I could also see this potentially maybe in Big Spell Rogue or Big Spell Mage. Because a 3 mana 4/4 on turn free is actually not bad for efficient trading. However, that's on turn 3. This card is going to feel really bad to play later than turn 3, if I'm being quite frankly honest. If you play it earlier, great! If you play it later, it's going to feel worser and worser and worser and worser. I think this is mostly going to see its application in Arena. I think it's a decent Arena card. I'll be surprised if this sees play in Constructed. Who knows, maybe there's an archetype that can play with this card that I'm not thinking of right off the bat. But I'll be fascinated to see this play in Constructed. Overall, I think it's pack filler that has some potential Arena applications, but nothing more. Next up is a Shaman spell, Elementary Reaction. Or no, it's Elementary. Okay, I see what you're doing there. You're trying to say elementary, but it's elementary. Okay, that's funny wordplay. But it's a 2-cost spell that says, draw a card. Copy it if you played an elemental last turn. This is not bad, actually. I mean, you want to play this in an elemental deck. Don't get me wrong. I don't think this will see play in the other deck archetypes. But cycling this spell and then being able to quote-unquote repeat it over and over again as long as you can meet the condition of this, which is playing an elemental. And trust me, the elemental sub-strategy mechanic, they're used to playing the elementals and then getting a benefit a turn later. Yeah, this is a really good card. It helps dig into their decks. Shaman will like to dig into their decks a lot, especially with some specific archetypes. Some I like, some I don't like so much. I think one thing I will warn people with this card is I don't think you want to get into best case mentality. I don't think you want to go into, I'm going to constantly draw and make sure it copies and make sure it copies. There should be a point where you just should be fine to play this as a 2-mana cycle and just dig into your deck. Because you don't want to dig into your deck too much and get into fatigue very fast. But still, who knows? Maybe if you're playing Mecha Cthulhu, maybe this is actually beneficial. Maybe. Overall, I think this is a fine common. This actually is probably one of my favorite ways they try to encourage the elemental mechanic in this set. I mean, consistent card draw is nothing to sneeze at. Plus, I mean, in Wild, if you need a spell that you can cast constantly for your inevitable Clown Fiesta of Yargsarum, that's a font. That's a font. Overall, fine common. It'll probably see play in Elemental Shaman. I would be relatively surprised if it doesn't. Next up, another neutral minion, the Explodinator, a 4-mana free 2 mech that has the battle cry, summon 2/0/2 Goblin Bombs. Now this, I like over the I like this over the version that creates microbots, no sweat about it. One, it's a mech, so it synergizes with magnetic. You summon more mechs, which synergizes with magnetic. I really like this card. I think this card will probably see some play. I mean, the CO2 Goblin Bombs, it will be hilarious if you synergize this with the legendary minion. Okay, maybe you're seeing my bias on this, I'll be quite frankly honest, but I still want to try to get away with that legendary combo of the legendary minion that plays Death Rattles when the Death Rattle minion is played or summoned, and then just be able to deal some extra points of damage in by minions I played. I really want to try that deck out the more I think about it. I might actually try to brew around that. That's some foreshadowing for probably a future video deck or something. Overall, I like this card. I like this card over other cards I've seen that have this summon 2 of a specific type of minion. Yeah, CO2 Goblin Bombs are nothing to quote-unquote write home about, but there's enough deck archetypes and even potential synergies that can take quite advantage of those little bombs, in my personal opinion. Next up, that priest buffing spell I was talking about, Extra Arms. It's a free mana buff spell. Give a minion +2/+2. Add more arms to your hand. That also gives +2/+2. Okay, I like this card. I mean, I know it's not a great card. It might even be a really bad card. But I just love the flavor of this card. And I do think there's some potential synergies in spell buff priests that will take advantage of this card. Especially if they do take advantage of the test subject and such. I mean, feeding spells into your hand is nothing to sneeze at. Now, the fact that they cost free mana is probably the overall detrimental cost of this, but there are ways to reduce the cost. Remember, we have Radiant Elemental. Overall, this one's pretty easy. I like this card. I think this card might actually see some potential fringe play in the Inner Fire spell combo decks. I mean, I would not mind drawing this from a Lilar, and I don't think I would mind putting this in a deck, so yeah, this card's just fine. It will see play. Get prepared, because you're going to see a lot of arms on a lot of creatures. Okay, next up is probably one of the most hilarious legendary spells, and it's in Hunter. It is an 8-mana legendary spell, Falark's Boomzooka. Oh my, that art is just hilarious. It's a beast on a rocket. I'm sorry, that picture is just absurd. The artist did a really good job on this. But let's talk about the spell. It's a spell that summons free minions from your deck, so it pulls free minions from your deck. That's really cool. They attack enemy minions. That actually could be really cool. Then they die. That might be cool, and it also might not be so cool. This one is very weird, legendary spell that Hunter got. I think this is one where obviously, the deck they want you to put this in is one that relies more reliant on late-game death rattles, and they even showed that within the reveal stream and such. The question is, would that type of deck work? Maybe. I mean, we have stuff like Katharina and such that benefits both on the death rattle, but the problem is you also want to take advantage of the battle cry, too. And getting Fox Boomzooka that, it just will feel, I don't know. There's also the argument that you could just don't mind of the minions dying because it synergizes with cards that benefit when a beast dies and such. Either by a death rattle that resummons a dead beast or stuff, or a variety of other methods. I'm going to keep my eye on this card. I do think there is some potential that it might see play. But I could also see this card being discarded because, well, sure, you do have the consistency of your deck design to help make sure that the minions that it brings on out is going to be big minions. But, and this is the biggest but, you have to do it at the cost of having only high cost or high value base attack minions. Playing this in a average mid-range Hunter deck is going to feel bad because then you pull out free 2/2s and then they attack some random minion. It's probably going to be like P-Shooter like damage if they have a really big minion. I don't know. You could make an argument that it might actually be a way in mid-range Hunter to, if they take out the lower cost minions, it's still used as a semi-burn, semi-removal spell, and then it helps them draw into the bigger minions if it doesn't work that way. I don't know, this card is very fascinating to think of all the potential applications. I'm curious to see how this card will see play in the meta. I like the design, I like the Death Rattle applications. Do I think it's practical? I don't think you want to play this legendary spell in the same deck as you would play the legendary scientist, because I don't think you want to summon your Boommaster Flark from this and then not have it trigger its battle cry, and then you're going to feel bad. I am very curious to see how this goes into the meta, because I sound like a broken record. It's just one of those, my brewing brain is constantly trying to think of ideas with this, and for that alone, I'll give it credit. It will be fun just to play this card and see it rocket around. And I just gotta end it on this. That art is still freaking hilarious. Also, side note, if you actually get to reading the flavor text on this, oh, you're gonna have a blast when you read the flavor text. Speaking of legendary spells we haven't covered yet, we haven't covered the Druid one, and this one is fascinating. It costs 1 mana, and it's Floop's Glorious Gloop. And it has the ability that for whenever a minion dies this turn, the turn you cast the spell, gain 1 mana crystal this turn only. This is one of the more weirder application of a Druid legendary spell. It's one of those where, if you can use this for burst ramp, that might actually be potentially very synergistic, especially with some of the more absurd cards that Druid are getting. But I do also think this card has some very subtle applications. I mean, one that I think people are not thinking right off the bat is that there are minions that are in Hearthstone's history that are still in the meta, that when a minion dies, it gets a benefit. Such as like the 4-2 that when a minion dies, you draw a card. If you're able to play the Floop's Glorious Gloop on like turn 5, and then play that minion, and then just do your efficient board trades like you would do usual, not only do you get the extra mana, but you hopefully will draw into cards that you can use to spin that mana on to hopefully restock your board and such. The potential tempo advantages that you can get with this card is nothing to sneeze at. Overall, I think this is another great spell and great card that Druid got. Boy, are we going to see a lot of Druid in this meta. I mean, I'm not going to go into the oversaturation, people thinking, oh, this is going to be Druid Stone and such. But yeah, I think you should be getting used to seeing at least once in a few matches people playing Druid, because they got some really fun tools. Some of them are absolutely busted, and some of them are just actually fun to see the potential brewing applications, like Floop's Glorious Gloop. Plus, that art is just... that looks like the art you would find on an energy drink, if I'm being honest, so... I can't wait to see this card's application. If I pull it, I'm definitely going to try some janky brews with it. It's going to be oh so fun. Next up is the 8 mana Gloop Sprayer. It is a 4/4. Okay, so the stats are not really that great, but it has a really good battle cry, which is summon a copy of each adjacent minion. Honestly, there's one deck archetype that I think this card is perfect in, and that is Quest Druid. I think if you use this late game to actually get extra copy of hopefully what will be 0-cost high-value minions like Tarantus or Primordial Drakes and such, I think this card is absolutely absurd, especially if you can get it within the deck when you activate your quest and quote-unquote have it for 0 mana. Oh my, there's just some things that I think is absurd. I can't wait to experiment with Quest Druid with this card. I think that's a perfect fit in the deck. And if you need to use it to help you trigger your quest by summoning a copy of extra high attack minions, you'll feel fine with that. It'll help you complete the quest relatively quick. I like this card for that deck alone. Will it see play any other archetypes? Maybe in Token Druid, but I think the high cost is going to kill it for that archetype. Malygos Druid, yes, we're all thinking of the joke of how you play your Malygos for cheap, and then, oh, you play the Forbidden Flute Malygos, and oh, hey, you can play this and have 4 Malygoses and do a basic burst combo. But let's not get ourselves, guys. you're probably just going to be winning by 2 Malgos alone in that specific combo deck. So I don't think you'll see play in that. But overall, I think I love this card for the potential janky applications. I can't wait to toy with it and just see what stuff I can mess with the very glorious Gloop. We shall find out. With science! Next up is an epic spell for Hunter, which is the Goblin Prank. And it has the ability to give her friendly minion +3/+3 and rush, but it dies at the end of the turn. This is one that's going to be really quick to talk about because I think it's a great card. I think if you play this in Death Rattle Hunter, it's very synergistic. You get in for an efficient trade with an early game Death Rattle minion. You could also put this on a bomb. You trade into the minion. Oh, if it dies by the trade, so what? You're still going to take advantage of the Death Rattle. Oh, it dies at the end of the turn? So what? You're still getting benefit from the Death Rattle. I could also see this potentially play in Spell Hunter as well, because they have ways to generate minions through spells and such, and they have problems with efficient trading, so they could actually just use this to make one of their minions be very efficient for a trade. That's a possibility. Yeah, I think this card is just relatively... It's an alright card. It'll be interesting to see if people can fit it in the competitive deck archetypes, but I do think this has a lot of applications that I cannot wait to see. Plus, the art on that is both kind of cool, yet a little morbid when you think about the full applications of what's going on. Even the flavor text kind of indicated that. So yeah, fine card. It'll probably see play. I can't wait to see the potential applications. Oh, one side note. You could also on turn 6, if you have a beast on the field, play this and then play Dire Frenzy. And if I recall correctly, it will shuffle the stats, but it won't shuffle the aspect that it dies at the end of the turn. I'm not sure. I have to experiment with that. Oh wait, I can't wait to experiment with that. So you could officially get a really big stat boost from the Dire Frenzy, and also give another stat boost with the Goblin Prank and have Rush. Oh man, I actually really want to experiment with that now that I think about it. Yeah, this is going to be a card that I'm going to have fun trying out and doing so many experiments on. Next up, a really peculiar neutral epic minion, and it is the Loose Specimen. Battlecry. Deal 6 damage randomly split among all other friendly minions. I don't know about this card. Yeah, it's a 5-mana 6/6. The stats is nothing to sneeze at. But that detriment of dealing 6 damage to your board presence, that can sometimes cost you games depending on some very specific set of circumstances. Now, you could make an argument that this might see play in some variation of Death Rattle decks to trigger off Death Rattles that are beneficial to play while it's on your turn. But, I don't know. That feels very detriment. There's also the fact that this is a beast at 5, so this could synergize with Death Star Rexar, and maybe you can do some synergies around that. That's something to consider, but I'm very... I don't know. This card is... those stats are really good. It's probably going to be a lot more efficient post-rotation when we don't have stuff like 5-mana 8/8s that their costs are a lot more efficient, in quotation marks, than this, but the only other application I could see this in a very janky warrior Pain Matters brew, and you play like the big boom tower thing, and then you actually then use it to deal to the Gunspire Tower, deal all the damage, and then just take advantage of all the damage matters, or even with patches and such. But that's very fringe. The best deck I can think that this card might actually synergize in is Big Warrior with that synergy, but also have synergy like Boom Ship, where, oh hey, you can actually play this minion out of your hand, and it has Brush, so you can still use it for efficient trading and such. Overall, this is a card that I think I absolutely first have to see it be played by people to see if it's real good. But at first glance, this card seems really, really bad. The art, though, is actually pretty cool, though. Not gonna lie, that art is actually very trippy. Next up is the Kaboombot, a free mana 2/2 mech with a Death Rattle. Deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion. I don't know if it's just Dr. Boom's more explosive personality getting onto me, but I think this card's just fine. There are people that are just like, they don't like the card a lot because of the stats alone and the factor of the variance of the random enemy minion. Who knows, maybe I'm just still getting so tempted on the Bomb Hunter deck with synergizing with the legendary minion that plays your Death Rattles and such, that I'm more optimistic and biased on this card. But I think it's an alright card. It's a perfect card in Arena in my personal opinion, and it's a card that if you absolutely have to play it, I think you have more benefits playing this than you think at first glance. Plus, it's a mech, so keep in mind, Magnetize is a thing. And some people are thinking right off the bat, okay, but I need to take advantage of the Death Rattle, right? Well, remember, there are ways to trigger Death Rattle without having to get the minion killed. So, case in point, on turn 6, you can play Kaboombot, then you can play the Venomizer, make it a 4/4 Death Rattle that has Venomous, and then play Dead, and then deal 4 random poisonous damage to hopefully a high-cost minion, and don't have to... and hopefully kill the minion off without having to not even attack with it. Yeah, there's actually some potentially funny applications with this card. I can't wait to toy with it. Who knows, maybe I'm just having quite an explosive cognition. Huh? Okay, let's get to the next card. Next up is a really weird epic. It's the 5 mana free Hollow Mentor, and it has the ability that after your opponent plays a minion, summon a 1/1 copy of it. I think this is really bad. At least in Constructed, this is really bad. Now, don't get me wrong, I see where they're going with this card. They're trying to go with it that in specific weird archetypes like, say, Cube Lock and such, making a 1/1 copy of a cube that gets its Death Rattle of summoning a minion and such, and then having that copy on your side of the battlefield can be a significant threat. The problem, though, is the stats. If opponent is very cautious of not wanting you to get a 1/1 copy of one of their high-value minions, chances are they're just going to trade into this minion. However, and I don't think this is a card that's intended for Constructed. Yeah, you can get it from a pack, don't get me wrong. I think this is more... You know how with Hearthstone they do those tavern brawls where it's like, oh, you and the opponent are actually cooperating against some random boss and such, like against either Nefarian or the giant mech boss and such, whatever his name is, I'm forgetting it right off the bat. I think this is a card that might actually see play whenever they do a tavern brawl of that, because if I play it in a game where I'm cooperating with the opponent to a victory condition, this card is actually great in those archetypes. But other than that, I don't see it. I think this card is legitimately bad and Constructed in ladder. Maybe people will have fun with it in Arena, but I think this card is really bad. This card is probably going to only see play in a cooperative tavern brawl, and that is probably it. Last up, if the last video we started with one of my favorite commons from the set, we're going to end this video with probably one of my least favorite legendaries from the set, and it is the Harblina Celestia. It's a 4 mana 5/6 with stealth. After your opponent plays a minion, become a copy of it. Where do I begin? Okay, I think people are going to fall into best case mentality with this card. I think they're going to think, oh, there's some big minion archetypes in the meta, like Big Priest or such, like in Wild, or maybe Big Druid and such. And then I can play this minion, and then it becomes a copy of one of their big minions, and they have to deal with that board state. Plus, it also has stealth, so it's hard to remove, and it's a lot better than Holomancer. This card should be really good, right? No. And for one specific reason. Sure, when you go against the big mage archetype, this card's actually fine. The problem is, when you go against aggro or mid-range, this card is absolutely horrible. Think about this. You play this for 4 mana, and then you're like, oh, can I get a big minion out of this? Can I get a big minion out of this? And then they play a 1 mana mech. You spend 4 mana to get a copy of a 1 mana mech. That should be relatively enough said there. But for me, I'm an optimistic person. I like to leave on an optimistic note, so I'm going to try to be optimistic on this card, even though, in my opinion, it is one of the worst legendary minions. One argument I could see is this might actually be very synergistic, because a 4 mana 5/6 is actually decent stats. So if you have ways to give this minion rush, so let's say either by the boom ship or using rocket boots and such, you could actually in theory use this minion for an efficient trade, and then if it's left on the board, maybe hopefully the opponent makes a mistake and not trade into it and then play one of the minions and then forget that this will become a copy of that minion. Maybe? I guess the last optimism I will say is, as much as this legendary is very bad, the art on it though is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, you know somebody is going to be cosplaying that at BlizzCon. No sweat about that. Card may not be amazing, but that art is legitimately very dope. And overall, that's all the cards from the Boomsday project. My overall impression from the set after looking at all the cards, I actually really anticipated this set. Sure, this sounded a little bit negative on this last video because I kind of reviewed most of the pack filler cards. But let's be frank, there's some very exciting cards. Like all the mechs we're getting, I think there's some very fun deck archetypes that you can build. I think this set is going to be very fun to play. Thank you guys for watching this series. I know that this video is gone very long, so I'll try to cut it. But I still want to say it, absolutely from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for seeing my opinion on this stuff. I hope it helps impact you and helps you with your deck building decisions and such. And I hope you have a blast with this expansion. As mentioned before, I'm going to try to stream this on launch day thanks to the help with a friend. And also try to make some videos before the stream starts or before the stream and the beginning launch leak by, maybe showing off some potential juicy deck techs you can do, or maybe an opinion video or such. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to do this. Overall, though, if you have any disagreements with cards or any way you think I can improve this series or the channel in general, leave it in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video. And email me at the email address below if you have any constructive commentary to help better improve the series or any videos that you want to see in the future. Overall, thank you for your time. I hope you have a lovely day. Let Dev out. Badoo.